A gentleman by the name of M.K. Cozzens designed and built the house on 12 Chestnut Street back in the 1850s. He was a civil engineer and a map maker, among other things. One of the most memorable things about Mr. Cozzens is that he was the first to protest development. The natural beauty of Ogden Park was about to succumb to housing development. Cozzens recruited James Hamilton into the protest, but these men eventually faced defeat, calling the developers hogs, vandals, and Visigoths. Cozzens had a son who was a painter. The son married a woman who taught sewing machine skills. Larry and Peggy have always been in love with the house since they first set eyes upon it. So when the opportunity to purchase the house arose, they worked a few miracles. Immediately, they felt like they had arrived home. What was it that drew both Larry and Peggy to the house? You can't deny the natural charm, the craftsmanship, and the wonderful river views. But it was something more. Familiar, perhaps? They felt like they had arrived home. Interestingly, both Larry and Peggy are artists, and not only that, but Peggy taught sewing machine skills at Marymount College. They have a charming home. So much of the original character remains. The shutters still adorn the windows, the roof is still tin, and entering through the doorway is like taking a step back in time. But are there any ghosts? Peggy doesn't believe in ghosts. She doesn't believe in them, but ask her if she's seen one, and you might get a completely different impression. Resting on the edge of the property is a building which was once used as the barn. The ground floor space was used to store hay and equipment. The animals resided in what is now the basement, where you could once enter from the side street. Today it's the studio where Peggy paints. One winter afternoon, at about 3 o'clock, Peggy was in the basement of the old barn doing some framing work. At that time of day there's a lot of natural light coming through the 2 small windows. Peggy began to notice that this particular day was ever so still and quiet, absent of the usual street sounds. She felt the presence of another person. There was no one visible, but she couldn't shake the increasingly eerie feeling she was not alone. In her mind's eye there appeared a man, probably middle-aged, short, thick in the middle, sort of shaped like a sweet potato. He was wearing work clothes and was just standing there watching her. He didn't seem to want anything, and then his image just faded. A few years later, Larry was going through some photos at the Historical Society when he found a photo of Thomas Jewell. Jewell was the previous owner of the Blizzard House. He had a shoe repair shop on Main Street. In the photo, Jewell and his helper were standing in front of their shoe shop. Peggy took one look at the picture and immediately recognized one of the men. It was the shoemaker's assistant that she had seen in her mind's eye and whose presence she had so strongly felt. Peggy firmly believes in her experience, even though she doesn't believe in ghosts. Perhaps, just perhaps, the image of the assistant she saw so clearly beside her that day was the remnants of an image of a man caught in time, from a time when that man had actually been standing there. The shoemaker's assistant isn't the only image caught in time at 12 Chestnut Street. In the back of their living room was once the kitchen. There's an area where they must have done the laundry. Peggy and Larry now have a washing machine, a dryer, and some tools there. One night, Peggy went down to put some wash in the dryer. As she turned, she thought she had seen a man rush by. This time it was much clearer, and not only seen in her mind's eye. The man was wearing a striped shirt, sort of like an Italian gondolier. Quite startled, her first reaction was to wonder what that man was doing in her laundry area. It was in that moment that she realized that she could see through him. This was no man. This was a ghost, wasn't it? Was it her imagination? She still wonders from time to time. Peggy still hesitates to believe in ghosts. She believes in her experiences, but pauses to consider a more logical explanation. Now, her husband Larry, on the other hand, he tends to wonder of the nature of ghosts. Larry has never shared his wife's experiences, but he did witness the results of another who has. You see, one day the fuel man had come and was working in the back room where Peggy had experienced her laundry visitor. The fuel man became very pale and ill at ease. He rushed out of the room, where he informed Larry that he had a haunting feeling that he was not alone, and he was eager to be out of there. It took some doing, but Larry was eventually able to calm the man and get him to go back and finish the job. There was a presence in the room, and it had made this man extremely uncomfortable. Now, while Larry has not, as of yet anyway, experienced anything unusual in the house himself, the expression of concern in this workman's paled face and distressed body language was enough to convince him that this man and his wife had truly experienced something.